Yay. All right. And then.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So, hay muchas similaridades entre el sur de España y el sur y aquí en los Estados Unidos. So even though it's a great distance away, I found a lot of similarities between Spain and the south here. I'm going to talk about the similarities of the southern culture that I grew up in here, as did most of you, and then the southern culture in the state of Andalusia or Andalusia in Spain. So, like a lot of you guys, I grew up in Texas and then spent a lot of time growing up in Louisiana and some other southern states. And so I've grown proud and kind of more interested as I've grown up in our own southern culture. And then spring of 2014, I lived in Seville in the southern state of Andalusia for about 5 months. So I learned a lot about the southern culture there. And as I kind of spent more and more time, I started to realize there was a ton of similarities between the south there and the south here. So I guess the first thing, interestingly enough, was the language. The accent was kind of a big deal. So the Sevillano or the Sevillan accent was apparently really distinctive. As soon as I started learning the language a lot better, as I traveled to different parts of Spain, the other Spaniards kind of said, "Oh, you have a Sevillano accent," and I kind of thought about it and compared it to how people from New York or the North would think that we have a Southern accent here. Another big difference was almost a slurred speech. They drop off a lot of their consonants in the words. They kind of make contractions. They speak a little bit slower. And so it's almost really similar to how we say y'all or ain't, or a lot of those contractions that we use here in the South. And so I just thought that was interesting that even though two completely different languages, they have a lot of similarities. The biggest thing I think that I fell in love with the lifestyle there was actually the entire lifestyle itself and just kind of the pace of life and kind of the openness of the people. So the biggest thing that I realized first and foremost was the southern hospitality that I grew up in here and also that existed over there. And between Madrid and Barcelona and some other places, a lot of people were kind of hustle and bustle, closed off, kind of like you would find in maybe the busier cities like New York or LA or something. But in Seville, everyone would kind of invite you into their homes. You know, after a few hours of talking, people would just be extremely open, hang out with you. Complete strangers would spend the day with you, and that was a lot like kind of how I grew up here in Texas and Louisiana. Another thing is the pace of life. They just have a really relaxed pace of life. So I guess for us, growing up in the Metroplex, it's a little bit faster. But if you, again, compare it to LA, New York, places like that, we move really slowly. And it's the same way in Seville. They just have a really slow, relaxed pace of life. They have a set-aside siesta time where they nap. They actually close down businesses for 2 to 3 hours. And it just kind of makes for a more relaxed, happier, generally positive atmosphere that I grew up and love here, growing up in Texas and Louisiana and the other states like that. And so there you have it, quite a few similarities. As with all things that I grew up in, similarities in the language, the accent, the southern hospitality, the openness of the people, and the relaxed lifestyle, I found that there's quite a bit of similarities between the southern state of Andalusia and the southern states here in the U.S. So I guess I learned that it seems no matter how far you go, the South is the South. It almost seems like Texas is so big that it reaches across the sea. You can even find parts of home all over the world. Adios, y'all.